In this video, we will find the domain and range of linear equations. Pictured are primary vocabulary words that you should ensure you are familiar with. If you're not, I recommend that you look in prior notes and possibly videos online. Number 5, an athlete ran 12 seconds at a constant speed. The linear function shown represents the distance the athlete ran in yards, y, as a function of the time in seconds, x. And our function is f of x equals 25 over 3x. What is the range of the function for the situation? On the TI-30, what we need to do to solve this for the range, let me see, we're dealing with range, so that implies that we need to look for y values. So that would eliminate a and b. Now, what do? Well, we're going to enter our equation into the table. Okay, so I'm going to clear out what we already have and then set up my fraction, 25 over 3, then arrow over and select our x. Okay, now what we need to do is find out when we end at 12 seconds. It says the athlete ran 12 seconds, so we ended at 12 seconds. So we need to see what our y value is, our maximum is at the 12 seconds. So we can use auto for that. So let's enter and go down and over to ask. I'm sorry, not auto. We need to use ask. Ask X. Okay, so enter to where it's highlighted and then enter again till we see it. Now, if you've watched other videos, if you are familiar with this calculator, you can just delete out each of the 3 lines because it's a multi-view. We have only 3 lines to work with. Now, remember, if you're using the TI or used to using the TI-84, using delete is probably a bad thing as far as when you're dealing with some of the tables and certain things. So make sure try clear first. But it's what we use for our 30. Okay, so now let's simply enter 12. And there you go. It's 100. So option D would be the correct selection. Okay, but we can go back. Let's clear it and let's use auto. And that means that we would just create the table. And we could just arrow up and down to see what happens. Now, as you can see in between, as he's running, it's fraction. But that's not what we need. We need the maximum at 12 seconds. So from 0 to 12, he actually is going to run up to 100 yards. That's pretty impressive, actually. Okay, so there it is. He runs his 100 yards at 12 seconds. All right, now let's try another calculator. Solve 5 on the TI-84. We need to use y equals so we can enter our equation. Well, we already have an equation there, so let's clear that out. Remember, pushing clear is best. Now let's set up our fraction. Okay, so alpha y equals, number 1 is what we want, so push enter. Okay, I have 25 over 3, arrow over, and you can enter your x. So now we have it entered. So let's look at our options. Well, we need range. Okay, we need our range. So that means we're looking at y values. So A and B are not appropriate options. Now we have C and D. In this, for these two cases, don't just pick the maximum amount. 100 is less, but it could be the maximum for the 12 seconds. So we have 2 options. One, we can just go with auto, and that'll create an auto table, and we can just arrow down. So let's see what we have ours on. Okay, we have it on auto. See where it says independent, dependent? Well, they're both on auto. Well, the independent would be the X values, and we need to enter 12. Or we could do, it's set up for a table. So I'm going to say start my table at 0. Okay, and then let's try ask first. Okay, go over to ask. It's like your TI-30. and you have to highlight that. It doesn't call it Ask X though, like the 30. Okay, so we have it on Ask. Now, second and graph gives us a table. Well, there's nothing there. But notice we've got a lot of rows. So we could enter a lot of things, but for us, we need 12. So then push enter and it says 100. So that verifies option D is what we need. Now let's go back. Okay, I am going to say second window and let's go ahead and put it back on auto. Okay, there it is. And push enter and it should have it set up. So say second graph. And it is set up. Now, it looks like it's not complete, but if you keep arrowing down, it'll fill in. See, it's because of the fractions that it does that sometimes. So don't think that your list is ending. But we need to go down to 12. And it verifies at 12 seconds. He stops. He's gone 100 yards because Y is in yards. Okay, and that verifies option D on the TI-84. Let's try another calculator. Okay, on the TI-Nspire, we need to select graph. So go down to graph. There's more than one way to select a graph, but we can go ahead and just arrow down, push enter. Okay, this isn't getting us what we need. So let's go to doc. Okay, and it gives us options. Oh, I'm using a digital pen. Maybe I shouldn't use it. Let's go to new document. There we go. And no, I do not want to save it. So now I'm going to go to graph and go ahead and create my equation. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to go ahead and go right here by the number 9 and select my fraction, which is first. See it highlighted. Now, there are some different Nspires. I just so happen to have a little bit older version here. But it's essentially the same way to find them on all the versions, okay? To find your fraction and other things. So let's set up our fraction by selecting enter. Okay, so 25 and arrow down and put in our 3, arrow over, and our X. Now we've typed it in. Now we need to enter it. So push enter and it's going to give me a graph, but it's not a graph that's really going to help me as it is. So yeah, I could trace and keep going up. Let's just create a table and see the value of 12 seconds because remember, we're looking for the range, not the domain. And that means option A and option B are not valid because range is associated with the Y values. So at that point, as we know, we need to see which of these maximums, 100 or 110, are what we want. So what do? We need to select menu. Okay, and then we need to, well, we could analyze it, but that's not going to help. I mean, we could, I suppose, but it's really not going to help us. What we need to do is create a table, and I want a table with a split screen. Okay, and there we go. So if I arrow down, it will find 12 for me. There's 5, 6. I know the numbers are small. It is the first column. There's 8, 9, 10, 11, and there's 12, 100. And as you see, it shows up on the bottom for us, okay? And then you also have the other arrows here, and they really don't help us for this. We need to arrow down using our pad, our little mouse pad we have on our calculator. Okay, well, 100 is the maximum when he stops running at 12 seconds, and that verifies option D. Okay, let's try another calculator. Okay, on the Desmos Graphing calculator, well, for us, it'll be the TEKSES version, but it doesn't matter which one we use here. One thing that we can do instead of going through multiple steps is we can say add table, because remember the table is going to be best in this situation. Okay, now I'm gonna put in a 0, and then I'm gonna enter, and I'm going to put in 12 because my domain is from 0 to 12 seconds, and I'm looking for range. Now, that being said again, that means anything involving X values would be domain. So A and B are not valid options. That leaves me again with C and D. We are just trying to figure out which maximum we need to use. Okay, but you look over here and you're like, wait a minute, you haven't entered an equation. So let's do that. Let's actually enter the equation right here in our columns. So I have here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up my keyboard so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, and I can either type 25 and then divide, or I could set up a fraction. There's a fraction option given in this calculator. We don't need to bother to do that. And then it's over 3. And then I arrow over and select X. There's just one problem. That's not a specific X. If you notice, our table wants X of 1. So just type a 1 after it and it'll pop right down for you. And notice I have 1 point visible. Okay. And I can take, now I'm going from 0 to 12 was my domain, remember? I can put the little pointer over my little circle dot. That means I'm only going to give you dots. Now, watch what happens when I drag to 12. It should be way up here, but see, that's just too much trouble. Let me zoom out. That's the one thing about the calculator on a test. There it is, finally. It's at 100. Well, that tells me that option D is what I should select. Okay, but before we go through all of that, here, let me pull this down. You see it. Remember that on our Desmos graphing, we can make some changes. One thing I can do is I can change the color. I can change the size of the dots. They're a little larger where you can see them better. I also can create a line. Okay. And then, of course, I can put in other values, but he doesn't keep running, does he? So maybe I want to see how he does at 6 seconds. But we know that 100 is his maximum at 12 seconds. And that verifies option D. C would be him running past that. And he doesn't run uh, 14. I think we tried 14 seconds. Let me put that in really quick. Was that how? No, actually, for 110, maybe 13, not even that. So even if we selected 110, it wouldn't be a valid second because it says in seconds. So there we go. Our maximum is 100. D's been verified. Thank you for watching. If you would like the materials that accompany these videos, you can visit us at numbersareradical.com. And once again, everyone, happy testing.